China and Syria have agreed to a strategic partnership during a meeting between Syrian leader Bashar Assad and Chinese President Xi Jinping. Assad is in China on his first visit to the country since 2004. China has been a loyal backer of Assad's regime, giving it diplomatic support at the UN through the past decade of the Syrian civil war. Assad also joined China's Belt and Road Initiative last year and is looking for Chinese help in reconstruction efforts in Syria. And joining me now for more from London is Haid. He's a Syrian columnist and a consulting fellow with the Middle East and North Africa program at Chatham House. Mr. Haid, what does Bashar al-Assad hope to get out of his trip to China?
Well, thank you for having me. I think the two main objectives that Assad wants to get out of this are first, boost its legitimacy internationally, and that you have to remember that this meeting has basically is happening after recent diplomatic relations have been restored with Arab countries in the region. So now Assad is trying to restore its legitimacy or boost its legitimacy internationally. And the other objective is related to convincing China to return and resume its financial and economic activities in Syria and engage in rebuilding and reconstructing Syria.
What is the Chinese interest here in playing along and helping Bashar al-Assad?
Well, I think that the main objective from China's perspective is a diplomatic one. China is most likely using this in order to challenge the efforts carried out by the US, among other Western countries, to continue to maintain Assad's diplomatic isolation. So it's, in a sense, a blow to the US efforts rather than really clear objective from their side to change their position on Syria and resume their financial activities there. I don't think that the Chinese government for now they're thinking about resuming their economic activities there, because there are many challenges that prevent that, and those challenges have not been addressed yet.
Can you speak a bit more about China's role in the Middle East here, the wider role there? Because in March, it really came into prominence after China mediated a deal between Saudi Arabia and Iran. So what does China really want to do in the Middle East?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think, first of all, China has played a big economic role in the region for many years, but what China has been trying to do, at least which became clearer since the beginning of this year, is that they want to expand their diplomatic role in the region. And that started with the deal they brokered between Saudi and Iran there. But then after their success in basically inking that deal, they started expanding their diplomatic role in the region. So they invited the Israelis and the Palestinians, and they have been engaging with both sides. Now it seems that they are trying to basically expand their diplomatic role within the basically Syria context and work on a different conflict there as well.
I'd like to, speaking about this expanded role in the Middle East, I'd just also like to look at Beijing's role in the world, because before Bashar al-Assad, Beijing was hosting Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi, as well as some Russian officials. Do you read this as China's attempt to court leaders who've been ostracized by the West and project itself as a legitimate power center in the world?
I think, yeah, it's safe to say that, because now China has been trying to basically reach out to all those who have clear anti-US, anti-Western position and build a coalition with them in order to become a main rival to the US and others as well.
I'd like to speak within that context of what's happening now about China and Russia, that no-limits partnership that was agreed to by both countries at the start of the Ukraine war. Russia, too, particularly in the context of Syria, has been backing President Bashar al-Assad, and now China has expressed interest in having some sort of a connection with Bashar al-Assad, maybe in reconstruction efforts. Do you see some sort of an axis forming between Beijing, Moscow, and Damascus that works in Damascus's favor?
Yes, but we have to remember that Russia's and Chinese cooperation when it comes to Syria did not start just now. China has been supporting Russia's efforts to prevent the US, among other countries, from challenging Assad's authority or making clear resolutions that might end his position in Syria. So China has vetoed many UN motions that are considered anti-Assad throughout the conflict. And those motions were also vetoed by Russia as well. So it's fair to consider their relationship to be historical, not just right now, did not start right now. Within this context, it's safe to say that, yeah, they are expanding on that sort of understanding and cooperation in order to formalize that cooperation and expand it to include other countries as well.
We'll leave it there for the time being, but thank you so much for joining us today. Hyde in London. Thank you, sir.
Well, Dr. Yulia Gurul-Haller analyses China's role on the global stage for Freiburg University. I asked her why China is now cozying up to Syria's Assad.
Well, I think China has two strategic interests taking out of this visit of Assad in China. I wouldn't overestimate the strategic importance of this visit, but there is a political and an economic incentive I see. Politically, of course, this visit comes in very handy at a time in which China is trying to expand its role in the Middle East beyond economic engagement. And of course, it's playing quite nicely into Xi Jinping's hands to provide alternatives to Western engagement, to provide potential financial support to the Assad regime. And throughout all the years of the civil war, China has never left Syria's side. It has used its role in the UN Security Council various times to vote against resolutions criticizing Syria. And now it is, of course, a strategic move also to expand its role in a region in which the United States has traditionally been the dominant force.
Okay,
and
so
economically, I think we need. Economically, I think we need to keep in mind that China is currently celebrating. China is currently celebrating 10 years of its Belt and Road Initiative this year, and Syria joined the BRI last year, and is yet another quite strategic puzzle piece for China to expand this initiative into the region. And I think especially the port of Latakia, which is Syria's biggest port, is of particular importance here because it could give China an access to the Mediterranean Sea.
Okay, so how much of what sort of help can Assad expect from China, given that Syria's economy is in ruins after a decade of civil war?
Well, what he can actually expect in terms of numbers is quite uncertain, I think. What Assad is definitely hoping for is big investments. So Syria really needs Chinese financial support to rebuild the country. Assad does not have many allies left except for Turkey, Russia, and Iran. And those three, of course, lack the financial forces to help Syria rebuild the country. So China is basically Syria's only and last hope to gain international investments. I think China will be very cautious in providing huge sums directly. We see Chinese companies still very cautious to invest in the country. the fear to actively go against Western sanctions here is, I think, still a lot bigger than what is to gain from investments in the country. So right now, it's quite uncertain, I think, what Syria can actually expect in terms of investments.
And will a greater Chinese presence in Syria, will that be welcomed by the wider Middle East?
So and so. I mean, if we interpret this visit against the backdrop of the recent Chinese brokering of the Iran-Saudi rapprochement agreement, we can draw two conclusions here. Iran would obviously welcome a stronger Chinese ties to Syria. It has itself long-standing good relations to China. For Saudi Arabia, which had quite the contrary position also in the Syrian civil war, I think they could see a stronger Chinese engagement or even a strategic partnership between China and Syria as quite the affront. And I would be very interested in seeing how Saudi Arabia would react to this strategic partnership that has been announced today.
It's fascinating. Thank you for talking us through that, Dr. Julia Gurol-Haller from the University
for having me.
of Freiburg. Thank you.